When I walked into my daughter's dining room for Thanksgiving dinner, she looked me up and down and said, "Mom, you embarrass the family with that old face of yours." The words sliced through me like a frozen blade. That old face of yours. I felt my skin tighten as if it were physically shrinking around my bones, the heat of humiliation washing over me in waves. That old face of yours. 27 years of sacrifices, of sleepless nights, of unconditional love reduced to 5 cruel words at a table set for 12. My hand instinctively rose to my cheek, fingers trembling against skin that suddenly felt foreign, marked, criminal even. The turkey in the center of the table blurred as tears threatened, but I refused to let them fall. Not here, not now. Not in front of my daughter's perfect in-laws with their Botoxed foreheads and designer outfits, all watching me with that mixture of pity and relief that they weren't me, that they hadn't let themselves go like I apparently had at the shameful age of 53. Amanda, double quotes, the words died in my throat, replaced by the metallic taste of shock. My son-in-law Scott cleared his throat awkwardly, his eyes fixed on the cranberry sauce as if it held the secrets of the universe. My daughter's mother-in-law, Vivian, with her surgically tightened face that never quite moved right when she spoke, raised a perfectly penciled eyebrow. The silence stretched, punctuated only by the gentle clink of ice against crystal, as someone I couldn't even register reached for their water glass. "Well," Amanda continued, her voice dropping to a stage whisper that everyone could still hear perfectly, "I've booked you an appointment with my cosmetic surgeon for next week. It's my Christmas gift to you. To all of us, really." She smiled, that confident smile that used to make me so proud. When had that smile become so cold? "People were asking me if you were my grandmother at the office party last year." My grandmother, Mom. My tongue felt swollen in my mouth, too large to form words. The room temperature seemed to drop 20 degrees in an instant, leaving me with goosebumps along my arms. I'd spent 3 hours getting ready for this dinner, my hair freshly colored to hide the gray, a new dress that had cost $189 I couldn't really afford, makeup applied with trembling hands that weren't as steady as they used to be. 3 hours to prepare for execution by my own child. "I think your mother looks lovely," said James, Amanda's father-in-law, breaking the excruciating silence. His kindness, though genuine, only made it worse, somehow like offering a band-aid for an amputation. I saw my daughter's jaw tighten. Dad always said honesty was the best policy. And honestly, Mom, there are options now. No one has to look well like that anymore. It's practically a choice. Dad, my ex-husband Richard, who had left me for his 34-year-old personal trainer 5 years ago, telling me as he packed his suitcases that he deserved someone who made an effort. Richard, who now spent his weekends sailing with his new wife and her perky, gravity-defying breasts that I'd learned cost exactly $15,600 according to the receipt I'd found while packing his things. My eyes burned as I stared at the tablecloth ivory damask that I'd given Amanda as a housewarming gift. I traced the embroidered pattern with my gaze, counting roses to keep from counting the seconds of this humiliation. 1, 2, 3, 4. "Actually," I said, my voice sounding steadier than I felt, "I need to use the restroom." "Excuse me?" I didn't wait for a response, pushing back my chair with legs that felt numb, disconnected from my body. The walk to the bathroom was eternal, each step an exercise in dignity I wasn't sure I possessed anymore. Behind me, I heard conversation resumed quickly, too loudly as everyone pretended nothing had happened. The bathroom door closed behind me with a soft click that felt like the period at the end of a life sentence. I avoided the mirror at first, turning on the cold water and letting it run over my wrists. An old trick my mother had taught me for calming down. My mother, who had died never knowing what Botox was, whose laugh lines had been earned through actual laughter, whose hands spotted and veined as they'd become in her later years, had always been the safest place in my world. Finally, I forced myself to look up. The face that stared back at me was mine, just mine, the same face I'd had yesterday, and last month, and last year, The same face that had watched over Amanda when she had chickenpox at 7. That had beamed with pride at her college graduation. That had reassured her through 2 miscarriages before she finally had her son, my grandson Tyler. My eyes, still green, though perhaps less bright. My mother's cheekbones. The small scar near my right eyebrow from when I fell off my bike at 12. The beginning of a softness beneath my chin that hadn't been there in my 30s. It was a face that had lived. And now, apparently, that was unforgivable. I heard a soft knock at the door. "Catherine, are you okay in there?" It was Vivian, of all people. "I'm fine," I called back, the lie tasting bitter on my tongue. "I'll be right out. Take your time, dear, no rush." Her voice was honeyed with that particular southern charm that could mask any amount of venom. I wondered what they were all saying about me out there, what jokes were being made at the expense of my apparently offensive face. I took a deep breath and straightened my shoulders. I had 2 choices. I could leave now, drive home in shame, and never show my face, my horrifying, embarrassing old face, at my daughter's house again. Or I could go back out there and finish this dinner with whatever scraps of dignity I could muster. For a moment, I considered the first option. It would be easier, less painful in the immediate term. But something hard and angry flickered to life inside me, a spark of indignation that refused to be extinguished by my daughter's cruelty or my own shame. I reapplied my lipstick cherries in the snow, the same shade I'd worn since college, blotted it carefully, and walked back out. The conversation halted again as I took my seat. Amanda looked at me expectantly, as if waiting for me to announce I'd reconsidered and would be taking her up on that cosmetic surgery appointment after all. "The turkey looks delicious," I said instead, picking up my fork. "You've always had a knack for poultry, Amanda." My daughter's smile froze, the rejection of her gift hanging unspoken between us. "Thanks, Mom," she said tightly. "I used Grandma's recipe." My recipe, she meant. The one I'd taught her when she was 22 and hosting her first Thanksgiving in her tiny apartment. The one my own mother had passed down to me. I wondered if Amanda realized that each time she made it, she was replicating the work of my aging hands. Hands that had kneaded and basted and carved hundreds of meals for her throughout the years. "It's just that I worry about you," Amanda continued, her voice taking on that patronizing tone she'd perfected sometime in the last few years, the one that made me feel simultaneously ancient and childlike. "You've been alone since Dad left." "And I'm not alone," I interrupted, surprising myself with my firmness. "I have my work, my friends, my garden. And I had thought I had my daughter too." Vivian nearly choked on her wine. Amanda's eyes widened, unused to any pushback from me. "Of course you have me, Mom. That's why I'm trying to help you. You're not getting any younger, and dating at your age is hard enough without." "Without what?" I asked quietly. "Without looking my age. Without looking older than your age," she corrected, as if that made it better. "The procedure I'm suggesting is minimally invasive. Nancy at my office had it done, and she looks 10 years younger. No one even knows she had anything done." "I know," I said, cutting a piece of turkey with deliberate precision. "That's the problem, isn't it? Everyone's starting to look the same, smooth and tight and surprised. I like faces with history. With character." "Character," Amanda repeated, as if I'd said something profane. "Mom, character doesn't get you a second date at 53. Maybe I don't want the kind of date who's scared off by a few wrinkles." My daughter sighed dramatically, exchanging a long-suffering look with her mother-in-law. "It's not just a few wrinkles, Mom. It's my face," I said simply. "The only one I'll ever have." The table fell silent again. My grandson Tyler, all of 8 years old and blissfully unaware of the tension, piped up from the far end of the table. "I like Grandma's face. It's squishy when she smiles." A surprised laugh escaped me, genuine and warm for the first time that evening. "Thank you, sweetheart." "Tyler," Amanda said sharply, "finish your green beans." The conversation moved on, carefully steered away from my offensive appearance and toward safer topics: the weather, Scott's promotion, The upcoming school bake sale. I participated minimally, contributing just enough to avoid seeming rude or wounded. Inside, though, something was shifting, rearranging itself like tectonic plates before an earthquake. That old face of yours. The words continued to echo, gaining rather than losing power with each reverberation. I'd spent my whole life being the peacekeeper, the one who smoothed things over, who made everyone else comfortable at the expense of my own comfort. I'd raised a daughter who now found me embarrassing, who saw my natural aging as some sort of moral failure or personal affront. I'd been married to a man who discarded me when my exterior began to show the wear of the years we'd spent together. The children I'd carried for him, the meals I'd cooked, the home I'd maintained. I'd been erased, replaced, and now I was being told to erase myself further, to literally cut away parts of myself to maintain the illusion that women don't age, don't change, don't dare to look like the sum of their experiences. For the first time in years, perhaps in my entire life, I felt something that overrode my embarrassment, my hurt, my instinct to accommodate everyone else's needs and expectations. I felt furious. That same evening, as I sat in my kitchen still wearing the $189 dress that hadn't been enough to make me acceptable, I opened my laptop. My hands were steady now, fueled by a clarity that felt almost foreign after so many years of I typed 3 words into the search bar: age discrimination law. 3 days later, I sat in the waiting room of Wilson & Associates, a small law firm specializing in employment and discrimination cases. I'd taken the day off from the insurance company where I'd worked as an underwriter for the past 18 years, a job that had become increasingly uncomfortable in recent months as younger hires were promoted around me despite my superior numbers and institutional knowledge. My choice of law firm wasn't accidental. Janet Wilson had been my college roommate, a brilliant and unapologetic woman who'd gone on to build a reputation as a fierce advocate for those facing discrimination. We'd lost touch over the years, but I'd followed her career from a distance, taking a quiet pride in her accomplishments, even as I'd submerged my own ambitions beneath the demands of family life. Catherine Ellis, a young paralegal, appeared in the doorway. "Ms. Wilson will see you now." Janet looked up from her desk as I entered, her face breaking into a wide, genuine smile that showcased every one of her 55 years. "Kathy, my God, it's been what, 20 years? 22, I corrected, returning her smile as we embraced. "Your daughter's wedding. You looked beautiful." I was a nervous wreck. She laughed, gesturing for me to sit. "Amanda was there too, wasn't she? Just starting college." "That's right." I nodded, the mention of my daughter bringing Thanksgiving dinner rushing back. "She's 39 now, has a son of her own." Makes us sound ancient, doesn't it? Janet's eyes twinkled. "So, your message said you wanted to discuss age discrimination, but you were pretty vague on the details. What's going on, Kathy?" I hesitated, suddenly feeling foolish. I hadn't told Janet that my concerns weren't strictly professional, that I was sitting in her office because my daughter had told me my face was an embarrassment, and something in me had finally snapped. "I'm not even sure where to begin," I admitted. "The beginning usually works," Janet said gently, leaning back in her chair. Gone was the awkwardness of reconnecting after decades. In its place was the easy understanding we'd shared as young women dreaming of the lives ahead of us. So I told her everything about Richard leaving, about my stalled career, about Amanda's gift of plastic surgery and the humiliation of being told I was essentially too hideous to be seen in public. As I spoke, I realized I was giving voice to frustrations that had been building for years, feelings I'd dismissed as my own fault, my own failure to adapt to a world that seemed to have no place for women past a certain age. "I know this isn't really a legal issue," I finished, embarrassed by the tears that had formed despite my best efforts. "It's just, too. When I was researching age discrimination laws, I started thinking about how this isn't just happening to me at home. It's happening at work too, in more subtle ways. And then I saw your name. And I thought, double quotes, you thought right." Janet interrupted firmly. First of all, what happened with your daughter was emotional abuse, plain and simple. No different than if she'd criticized your weight, your intelligence, or anything else intrinsic to who you are. And second, I'd bet my license that what's happening at your workplace isn't as subtle as you think. She leaned forward, fixing me with an intent gaze. Tell me about your job. Specifics, promotions you were passed over for, comments made about your age or appearance, younger colleagues with less experience being given opportunities you weren't. For the next hour, I laid out the past 5 years of my career, the gradual shift from being a valued team member to being increasingly sidelined. The jokes about my supposed technophobia, despite my consistently high performance metrics. The way my manager had begun excluding me from client meetings where my expertise would have been valuable. 3 months ago, I said, they hired Amber, fresh out of college. Within 2 weeks, she was assigned to the Peterson account, our biggest client. One I've managed successfully for over a decade. When I asked why, my manager said they wanted a fresh perspective, and that Amber had more contemporary communication skills. The Peterson account represents 22.7% of my annual commission. I lost over $16,000 in income with that one decision. Janet had been taking notes, her expression growing increasingly grim. And did they provide any documentation of performance issues on your part? Any formal feedback that your handling of the account was unsatisfactory? I shook my head. My last performance review was exceeds expectations across all categories. I have the highest client retention rate in the office. And how old is your manager? 36, and the company leadership. Board of directors. I thought about it. There's one woman on the executive team who might be in her late 40s. Everyone else is under 50, mostly men. Janet set down her pen and looked at me for a long moment. Kathy, you don't just have a case, you have a textbook case, but more importantly, you have a choice to make. You can either continue to internalize the message that your value decreases with each passing year, or you can fight back not just for yourself, but for every woman who's been made to feel invisible, inadequate, or unwelcome simply for having the audacity to age. Her words struck something deep inside me, a chord of recognition that resonated with the anger that had been building since Thanksgiving. I want to fight, I said, my voice stronger than I expected. I'm tired of apologizing for existing. Janet's smile was fierce now. That's my girl. Now, here's what we're going to do. She outlined a two-pronged approach. First, documenting every instance of potential discrimination at work, building a case methodically and quietly. Second, connecting me with a network of women who'd faced similar situations professionally, personally, or both, who could provide support and perspective as I navigated what would undoubtedly be a challenging path forward. As for Amanda, Janet added, that's trickier. You can't sue your daughter for being an ageist brat. But you can set boundaries. You can refuse to accept treatment that diminishes you. And you can surround yourself with people who value you exactly as you are, wrinkles, wisdom, and all. As I left Janet's office that afternoon, stepping into the crisp December air, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: possibility. The weight of shame that had become so familiar, I'd stopped noticing it seemed lighter somehow, replaced by a tentative sense of purpose. That night, I did something I hadn't done since Richard left. I stood naked in front of my full-length mirror and really looked at myself. Not with criticism or comparison, but with curiosity and something approaching compassion. The body that had carried and nursed a child, that had known pleasure and pain, that had hiked mountains and swum oceans. The face that had laughed and cried, squinted in bright sunlight, and softened in the glow of love. I was 53 years old. I had earned every line, every soft place, every silver hair. Hello, I said softly to my reflection. I'm sorry I've been so hard on you. The following Tuesday brought my first real test. A mandatory team meeting had been scheduled, ostensibly to discuss quarterly goals, but, according to office rumors, actually to announce a restructuring that would likely include layoffs. As one of the more senior and higher salaried employees, I knew my position could be vulnerable. I dressed with deliberate care that morning, choosing a well-tailored charcoal suit that I knew highlighted my still slim figure, a silk blouse and a vibrant teal that brought out the green of my eyes, and the pearl earrings Richard had given me for our 20th anniversary, not because I owed him anything, but because they were beautiful and they were mine. I applied my makeup with precision, not attempting to look younger, but to look exactly my age, polished, professional, present. The conference room was already half full when I arrived, deliberately early. I chose a seat near the head of the table rather than my usual spot along the side, visible, unmistakable. My manager David did a double take when he entered, his eyes narrowing slightly at my position change. "Catherine," he nodded, a question in his voice. "David," I replied pleasantly, not moving an inch. As others filed in, I took out the small notebook Janet had given me, labeled documentation in her bold handwriting. Every interaction, she'd instructed, every comment, every decision that might indicate bias. Recorded all, contemporaneously, with dates and witnesses. The meeting began with the expected corporate platitudes, challenging market conditions, necessary adaptations, strategic realignments. Then came the restructuring announcement, 2 departments merging, reporting, lines changing, certain positions being reevaluated. "We'll be having individual conversations later this week," David concluded, his gaze sliding past me to fix on the safer territory of the whiteboard behind my head. "But I want to assure everyone that these decisions are being made based solely on business needs and future growth potential." Future growth potential. The euphemism hung in the air like a neon sign. Not past performance, not expertise, not client relationships cultivated over years, but potential, that conveniently subjective quality that could be assigned or withheld based on nothing more concrete than perception and prejudice. I made a note, the scratch of my pen audible in the tense silence. "Any questions?" David asked, clearly hoping for none. I raised my hand, aware of every eye in the room, turning toward me. "Yes, I'm curious about the criteria being used to determine which positions are being reevaluated. Will seniority and performance history be factors in these decisions?" David's smile tightened. "As I said, Catherine, we're looking toward the future. Past performance is certainly valued, but we need to ensure our team is adaptable to changing technologies and market conditions." I nodded, writing down his response verbatim. "And have these criteria been documented formally?" "I'd be interested in reviewing them." The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees. David's laugh was forced. "We're still finalizing the exact parameters, but rest assured, everyone will be given fair consideration." "Wonderful," I smiled, continuing to write. "I look forward to seeing those parameters once they're finalized." Transparency is so important in these situations. After the meeting, I felt eyes following me as I returned to my desk. Amber, the recent college graduate who'd been given my biggest account, approached hesitantly. "Miss Ellis, can I ask you something?" I looked up, noting the uncertainty in her young face. 23-24 at most, with the dewy skin and bright eyes I'd once had myself. "Of course, Amber. What can I help you with?" She glanced around nervously before speaking. "The Peterson account, I'm having some trouble with their compliance requirements. David suggested I figure it out on my own, but I know you managed them for years, and I thought maybe, double quotes, interesting. The account that had been taken from me because of my supposedly outdated approach was now proving challenging for the very person who represented fresh perspective and contemporary communication skills. For a brief, shameful moment, I considered refusing to help, letting Amber struggle as I had been left to struggle, letting David's decision backfire as it deserved to. But that wasn't who I wanted to be. "Pull up a chair," I said instead. "The Peterson compliance framework is complex, but there's a logic to it once you understand the historical context." For the next hour, I walked Amber through the intricacies of the account, explaining the relationships I'd built, the quirks of the key decision makers, the unwritten expectations that no manual or handover note could capture. To her credit, she was attentive and genuinely appreciative. absorbing everything I shared without the dismissive attitude I'd encountered from some other younger colleagues. "Thank you so much," she said when we finished. "I don't understand why they moved this account from you in the first place. You know it inside out." I smiled, recognizing an opportunity. "May I ask you something, Amber? When David assigned you to this account, did he give you any specific reason why it was being transferred from me?" She hesitated, loyalty to our manager clearly warring with her sense of fairness. He said they wanted someone who could grow with the client. Someone with longevity potential. Her cheeks flushed as the implication of her words became clear to both of us. "Longevity potential," I repeated, keeping my voice neutral as I made another note in my documentation book. "That's an interesting phrase. I'm sorry," Amber said quietly. "That doesn't seem right to me." For what it's worth, our eyes met, and in that moment, something shifted between USA recognition that transcended the artificial divisions of age and hierarchy. We were both women in a system that would eventually discard us, just at different points in the timeline. "It's not your fault," I assured her. "But thank you for being honest with me." As she walked away, I added her statement to my growing collection of evidence, feeling a new sense of purpose. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about challenging a culture that devalued experience, that treated aging, particularly women's aging, as a liability rather than an asset. It was about creating space for women like Amber to move through their careers without the looming fear that turning 40, 50, 60 would render them invisible or unwanted. That evening, I received a text from Amanda. "Just checking you're still coming to Tyler's school play on Thursday. He's playing a tree. Not a speaking role, but he has to sway in the background for 45 minutes. The normalcy of the message was jarring after what had happened at Thanksgiving. No acknowledgement of her cruelty, no apology, just the expectation that I would show up as I always did. Reliable grandmother that I was, regardless of how I'd been treated. My thumb hovered over the screen. Part of me wanted to decline, to protect myself from further judgment and criticism. But another part, the part that had stood naked before the mirror and made peace with my reflection, recognized that this wasn't just about Amanda and me. It was about Tyler, who thought his grandmother's face was squishy, in the best possible way. "I'll be there," I typed. Then, after a moment's consideration, I added, "But we need to talk, Amanda, soon." Setting boundaries, as Janet had advised, not cutting my daughter off. I wasn't ready for that, but no longer accepting the unacceptable either. Amanda's response came quickly. "About what?" The deliberate obtuseness was so typical that I almost laughed. "About respect," I replied simply. "See you Thursday." Thursday evening found me in the elementary school auditorium, seated in the third row, with a clear view of the stage where The Seasons of Friendship, an original play written by the music teacher, would soon unfold. I'd arrived early enough to secure a good seat, but late enough to avoid extended small talk with Amanda and Scott. They arrived 5 minutes before showtime, Amanda's eyes widening slightly when she saw me already seated. I'd taken extra care with my appearance. Not to look younger, but to look undeniably well. A cashmere sweater in a flattering russet tone. Dark jeans that fit perfectly, boots with a sensible but stylish heel. My hair freshly washed and styled in loose waves, my makeup minimal but precise. Not armor, exactly, but a statement. I am here, I am visible, I am not ashamed. "Mom," Amanda acknowledged, sliding into the seat beside me with Scott following. "You look nice." "Thank you," I said, accepting the compliment without qualification or self-deprecation. Another small change, no more, "Oh, this old thing." Or "I've gained so much weight it barely fits." Just gratitude for recognition. "Have you given any more thought to that appointment? The surgeon's schedule fills up quickly, and I won't be needing cosmetic surgery." "Amanda," I interrupted quietly, keeping my eyes on the stage where children were beginning to assemble in the wings. "But thank you for your concern." I could feel her tense beside me. "Mom, I was just trying to help. You're always so sensitive about everything." And there it was, the deflection. The minimizing. the shifting of blame that had characterized so many of our interactions over the years. My fault for being hurt, never her fault for causing hurt. We agreed to talk later, I reminded her, as the lights began to dim. This is Tyler's night. For the next hour, we watched as children portrayed the four seasons through song, dance, and remarkably creative use of cardboard props. Tyler, true to Amanda's description, played a tree standing stoically stage right, occasionally swaying when prompted, his face a study in concentration. During winter, when all the trees were supposed to lose their leaves, he flung his arms wide with such enthusiasm that he accidentally knocked over a smaller child dressed as a snowflake, then spent the rest of the scene attempting to help her up without breaking character. It was adorable, hilarious, and completely authentic childhood in all its unfiltered glory. I laughed openly, not bothering to hide my delight behind my hand as Amanda did, concerned about appearing too emotional or unrestrained. When the performance ended and Tyler took his bow with the rest of the cast, I cheered and applauded until my palms stung, watching my grandson's face light up as he spotted his family in the audience. Afterward, in the crowded hallway where parents and grandparents gathered to collect their young performers, Tyler broke away from his group and ran straight to me, still wearing his tree costume complete with a headpiece of papier-mâché branches. "Grandma, did you see me? Did you see when I helped Madison up?" Mrs. Peterson said I showed great improvisation, I supplied, kneeling despite my good genes to meet him at eye level. And yes, I saw everything. "You were the most magnificent tree I've ever seen in my life," he beamed, throwing his arms around my neck in a hug that nearly toppled us both. I closed my eyes, inhaling the distinctive scent of him school glue, fruit snacks, and that indefinable sweetness that all children seem to carry. When I opened them again, Amanda was watching us, an unreadable expression on her face. "We're heading to Dairy Queen to celebrate," she said as Tyler released me and ran to hug his other grandparents, who had just arrived. "You're welcome to join us, if you want." It wasn't the conversation we needed to have, but it was an invitation, a small olive branch. "Perhaps I'd like that," I said, rising to my feet with only the slightest wince at my protesting knee. I haven't had a chocolate dip cone in ages. At the ice cream shop, I sat beside Tyler, listening intently as he recounted his theatrical triumph in 8-year-old detail, complete with sound effects and dramatic reenactments. Scott's parents joined us as well, creating a buffer that kept my interaction with Amanda superficial but civil. As the evening wound down and Tyler's energy began to fade, replaced by the sugar crash that follows ice cream euphoria, I knew it was time to leave. "I should head home," I said, gathering my purse and coat. "Thank you for including me." Amanda walked me to my car, the tension between us palpable in the cold night air. "So," she said finally, "you wanted to talk." I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. Janet and I had rehearsed this conversation, but standing here now, face to face with my only child, the words felt inadequate. "What you said to me at Thanksgiving was cruel, Amanda. Not helpful, not honest. It hurt me deeply, not just because of what you said, but because of how you said it publicly. As if my appearance was something shameful, something that reflected poorly on you." She started to speak, but I held up a hand. "Please, let me finish. I've spent most of my adult life trying to make everyone else comfortable, trying not to take up too much space or ask for too much consideration. I raised you to be confident, to value yourself beyond your appearance, to stand up for yourself when someone treats you badly. I need to start taking my own advice." Amanda crossed her arms, defensive. "I wasn't trying to be cruel, Mom. I was being honest. That's what family does, they tell you the truth when no one else will. Is it truth though? Or is it just your opinion, shaped by a culture that tells women they should do everything possible to look younger, regardless of the cost, financial, physical, emotional? Would you want Tyler's future partner to speak to him the way you spoke to me, if he dares to show signs of aging someday?" Her eyes dropped, the first indication that my words might be penetrating. "That's different. He's a boy, I know." And somehow, men are allowed to age without being told they're embarrassing their children. I sighed, softening my tone. Amanda, I love you. That hasn't changed and won't change. But our relationship needs to change. I won't be spoken to that way again, not by you or anyone else. I won't be attending family gatherings where my appearance is considered a valid topic of criticism or discussion. And I won't be altering my face to make you more comfortable with having a mother over 50. So what? You're just not coming to Christmas. Her voice rose, incredulous. You're punishing all of us because your feelings got hurt. I'm setting a boundary, I corrected gently. And if you can respect that boundary, I'll be there for Christmas and every other family occasion, proudly wearing this face that raised you, loved you, and will continue to love you no matter what. The choice is yours. Without waiting for a response, I got into my car, started the engine, and drove away, my heart pounding but my resolve firm. In my rearview mirror, I could see Amanda standing in the parking lot, her expression unreadable in the darkness. I didn't know if she would choose connection or continued criticism. If our relationship could evolve or would fracture further. What I did know, with a certainty that felt like solid ground beneath my feet, for the first time in years, was that I was no longer willing to compromise my dignity for acceptance, not from my daughter, not from my employer, not from anyone. The following day, I received the expected email. My individual conversation about the restructuring was scheduled for 2:30 p.m. with David and a representative from HR. The timing was perfect. I had a 4 p.m. appointment with Janet to review the documentation. I'd been collecting and discuss next steps. I spent the morning finalizing my work on current projects, organizing my files with meticulous care, and backing up important documents to my personal email. All actions Janet had advised. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst, she'd said. And remember, if they do terminate you, don't sign anything in the moment. Not a separation agreement, not a non-disclosure, nothing. Tell them you'll need time to review any documents with your attorney. At precisely 2:30, I walked into the small conference room where David and Melissa from HR waited, their expressions professionally neutral but their body language tense. I took the seat across from them, placed my documentation notebook on the table, and smiled pleasantly. Thank you for making time to meet with me today, I said, taking control of the conversation before they could. The slight surprise on David's face was worth the momentary discomfort of assertiveness. Of course, he recovered quickly. As we mentioned in the team meeting, we're implementing some structural changes to better position the company for future growth. Unfortunately, Catherine, your current role is one of those being eliminated. There it was, the culmination of the subtle pushing aside that had been happening for months. Delivered in corporate euphemism, I felt a strange sense of relief mixed with anger, like lancing a boil that had been festering beneath the skin. I see, I said calmly. And what exactly are the criteria that led to this decision? David shifted uncomfortably, glancing at Melissa, who jumped in with practiced smoothness. We've been reviewing all positions based on alignment with our 5-year strategic plan, necessary skill sets for evolving client needs, and overall departmental efficiency. I opened my notebook, uncapped my pen, and looked at her expectantly. Could you be more specific about which of those areas my position failed to meet requirements? Another uncomfortable glance between them. David cleared his throat. Catherine, this isn't a performance issue. You've been a valued employee for how long is it now? 18 years, 4 months, and 17 days, I supplied. During which time I've consistently exceeded performance targets, maintained the highest client retention rate in the department, and trained 12 junior underwriters who have advanced in the company, including yourself. David, when you first joined us 9 years ago, Melissa pushed a folder toward me. We've prepared a separation package that I think you'll find quite generous. 6 months' salary as severance, extended health benefits, and outplacement services to help you transition to your next opportunity. I didn't touch the folder, and if I were, say 35, instead of 53, would my position still be eliminated? Would my alignment with the 5-year strategic plan be evaluated differently? The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Melissa's professional mask slipped for just a moment, revealing alarm. Age is absolutely not a factor in these decisions, Catherine. That would be discrimination, which this company does not engage in or tolerate. Interesting, I said, making a note in my book, because in the past 6 months, all 5 employees over 50 who have left the company voluntarily or otherwise have been replaced by individuals under 35. That creates a concerning pattern. David's face flushed. That's coincidental. We hire the best person for each role, regardless of age. And yet, I continued, when you reassigned my largest account, the Peterson account, to Amber, you told her you wanted someone who could grow with the client and who had longevity potential. Those were your exact words. His eyes widened almost imperceptibly. I don't recall saying that specifically. Amber does, I replied. As do several other colleagues who've heard similar comments from you regarding fresh perspectives and digital natives. I've documented these instances quite thoroughly. I tapped my notebook, including your statement in Tuesday's meeting about focusing on future growth potential rather than past performance or experience. Melissa intervened, her tone carefully modulated. Catherine, I understand this is difficult news. Change is hard for everyone. But I can assure you that this restructuring is based solely on business needs, not any personal characteristics of our employees. I smiled at her, the same pleasant smile I'd worn throughout my career when swallowing indignities and microaggressions for the sake of workplace harmony. Then you won't mind providing me with the written criteria used to evaluate all positions affected by this restructuring, as well as the ages of all employees whose roles were eliminated compared to those whose roles were preserved or created. For business analysis purposes, of course. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, David spoke, his voice tight. We'll need to conclude this meeting for now. Melissa, could you please schedule a follow-up once we've gathered the additional information Catherine is requesting? I stood, gathering my notebook and purse. That would be fine. I won't be signing anything today, as I'll need time to review the separation documents with my attorney. Janet Wilson, you might know her firm, Wilson and Associates. They specialize in employment discrimination cases. The name had the intended effect. Melissa's professional composure faltered visibly. Of course, take all the time you need. As I walked out of that conference room, back straight and head high, I felt a surge of something I hadn't experienced in years. Power, not over others, but within myself. The power that comes from refusing to be diminished. From standing in your own truth even when others find it inconvenient. Janet was waiting in her office when I arrived, early for our appointment, but clearly anticipating my news. So, how did it go? I recounted the meeting in detail, watching her expression shift from concern to strategic calculation. They panicked, she said when I finished, a note of satisfaction in her voice. Dropping Janet Wilson's name tends to have that effect on HR departments around here. She leaned forward, eyes intent. Now we have choices to make. We can push forward with a discrimination claim which, based on what you've told me, has merit, or we can use the leverage we've just created to negotiate a significantly better separation package. What would that look like? I asked. 2 years' salary instead of 6 months. Full benefits continuation. A non-disparagement clause that works both ways, protecting your professional reputation. And possibly consulting work at your current hourly rate for knowledge transfer and client transitions, which would both pad your income and create documentation of how essential your experience actually is. I considered this. And if we go the discrimination route, Janet's expression grew more serious. That's longer, harder, and less certain. Potentially more rewarding financially if we win, but also more emotionally taxing for you. And it would likely burn bridges, not just with your current employer, but within the industry, which would make finding another position at my age even more difficult, I concluded. Exactly. This is where pragmatism and principle need to find balance. She studied me thoughtfully. What do you really want out of this, Kathy? If you could design your own outcome, what would it be? The question caught me off guard. For so long, I'd been focused on survival, on not rocking the boat, on accommodating the needs and expectations of others. What did I want? I began slowly. I want to be valued for what I know and what I can do, not discounted because of when I was born or what I look like. I want to use my experience in ways that matter, and I want to help change things for other women who are being pushed aside because they had the audacity to age. Janet nodded, a slow smile spreading across her face. Then I have an idea. What if we negotiate not just for money, but for a new role? Not as an employee, but as an independent consultant, setting your own terms, choosing your own clients, leveraging both your industry knowledge and your newfound understanding of age discrimination issues. You mean start my own business? Exactly. And I happen to know several organizations that specifically work with professionals over 50 who've been displaced by ageism. They could be your first clients, providing both income and purpose while you build something that's truly yours. The possibility unfurled in my mind like a sail catching wind. Freedom from the subtle indignities of corporate culture. Control over my time and energy. The opportunity to reshape my professional identity, not despite my age, but because of it, because of the wisdom, perspective, and expertise that only comes with years of experience. I'd need to learn so much, I said, thinking aloud. Business formation, marketing, client acquisition, double quotes yes, Janet agreed, and you'd be brilliant at all of it, just as you've been brilliant at everything else you've put your mind to. Plus, you wouldn't be doing it alone. She reached into her desk drawer and pulled out a business card, sliding it across to me. The Silver Alliance. It's a network of professionals over 50 who support each other in entrepreneurial ventures. Everything from skill sharing to referrals to emotional support when the going gets tough. I'm a member myself. I picked up the card, feeling possibility solidify into determination. Let's do it. All of it, the negotiation, the consulting business, everything. That's my girl, Janet said with a fierce grin. Now, let's plan how to make your soon-to-be former employer very sorry they ever underestimated you. The following week was a whirlwind of activity. Janet and her team initiated negotiations with my company while simultaneously helping me establish the framework for my consulting business. I filed the necessary paperwork to create Ellis Strategic Underwriting Consultants, opened a business bank account, and began designing a simple but professional website with the help of a graphic designer from the Silver Alliance. Meanwhile, word had spread through the office grapevine about my confrontation and the termination meeting. I'd been placed on administrative leave during the negotiation process, but former colleagues reached out via text and personal email, some expressing support, others seeking advice on their own workplace concerns, and a few sharing similar experiences that reinforced the pattern of age discrimination I'd identified. Most surprising was a message from Amber, sent to my personal email, which she must have gone to some effort to obtain. Ms. Ellis, she wrote, I just wanted you to know that I told HR exactly what David said about the Peterson account. I know it might cause trouble for me, but it wasn't right, and I couldn't stay silent. If you need me to put it in writing officially, I will. Her courage touched me deeply. At her age, with her career still so new and vulnerable, speaking up carried significant risk. I wrote back thanking her and assuring her that while her integrity was admirable, I wouldn't ask her to jeopardize her position further. 7 days after my termination meeting, Janet called with news. They've accepted our counteroffer with only minor modifications. 2 years' salary as severance, full benefits for 18 months, the non-disparagement clause. And this is the cherry on top: a consulting contract for client transitions at $175 per hour, which is actually higher than your effective hourly rate as an employee. Relief and vindication washed over me. They must have been terrified of a formal complaint. Oh, they were, Janet confirmed, satisfaction evident in her voice. Especially after 2 more employees came forward with similar experiences after you left. You've started something, Kathy. Something important. Something important. The phrase stayed with me throughout the day, through signing the final agreement, through the carefully worded announcement the company sent out about my decision to pursue independent consulting opportunities. I had stood up not just for myself but for a principle that experience has value, that aging is not a liability, that women over 50 still have contributions to make and wisdom to share. That same evening, as I celebrated this new chapter with a glass of wine in my backyard garden, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold, my phone rang. It was Amanda. I hesitated before answering, still raw from our last conversation, still uncertain whether my boundary setting had made any impact. But avoiding her wasn't the answer either. "Hello, Mom." Her voice sounded different, tentative, perhaps even contrite. "I heard about your job. Are you okay?" The genuine concern in her tone caught me off guard. "Yes, actually. Better than okay. I'm starting my own consulting business." A pause. "Wow, that's really impressive, Mom. Thank you." I took a sip of wine, waiting. "Listen," she continued, "about what I said at Thanksgiving, and how I've been treating you lately, double quotes." Another pause, longer this time. "I've been thinking about what you said in the Dairy Queen parking lot, about boundaries and respect, and you were right. I wouldn't want Tyler to be treated that way. I wouldn't want to be treated that way." I closed my eyes, feeling a complicated mixture of emotions: relief, lingering hurt, cautious hope. What brought this on? Honestly, I saw how you were at Tyler's place, so confident, so present, and then I heard about you standing up to your company, demanding what you deserved. It made me realize, her voice caught. It made me realize I've been parroting things Dad used to say, attitudes I don't even really believe, about women and aging and appearance. And I've been projecting my own fears onto you. Fears of getting older, of becoming invisible, of ending up alone, like you did when Dad left. She took a shaky breath. "But you're not invisible, are you? And you're not alone. You're actually thriving in ways I never expected." It's made me rethink some things. The honesty in her voice felt like the first real connection we'd had in years. Not the superficial pleasantries or the critical help she'd offered, but genuine communication, adult to adult. "I'm sorry, Mom," she said finally. "I was cruel, and you didn't deserve it. Your face isn't old or embarrassing. It's just yours. And I love you, exactly as you are." The tears I'd been holding back spilled over. "Thank you for saying that. I don't suppose double quotes." She hesitated. "I don't suppose you'd be willing to have dinner this weekend. Just us. No Scott, no Tyler, no in-laws, so we can really talk." "I'd like that," I said softly. "Great. And Mom, I canceled that plastic surgeon appointment. I had no right to make it in the first place." After we hung up, I sat in my garden until the stars emerged, thinking about the dramatic shifts of the past few weeks, from humiliation to empowerment, from silence to voice, from acceptance of disrespect to insistence on dignity. The conversation with Amanda wasn't a magical resolution. We had years of patterns to work through, deep-rooted dynamics to reshape. But it was a beginning, an opening, a possibility of something healthier for both of us. The following Monday, I logged into the first session of a business development course offered by the Silver Alliance. 25 faces filled my screen, men and women ranging from their late 40s to their 70s, all embarking on new professional journeys after careers cut short by ageism, health issues, or family needs. "Welcome, everyone," said the facilitator, a vibrant woman in her 60s, with a crown of silver curls. "I'd like to start with a simple question. What unique strengths do you bring to entrepreneurship specifically because of your age and experience?" As participants began to share, citing resilience, perspective, extensive networks, freedom from family obligations that had constrained them when younger, I felt a growing sense of community and possibility. These weren't people mourning lost careers or fading relevance. They were innovators leveraging lifetimes of knowledge to create meaningful new chapters. When my turn came, I took a deep breath and spoke from a place of newfound confidence. I bring the understanding that my value isn't diminished by time, but enhanced by it. Every line on my face, every gray hair, every ache in my joints, on cold mornings they're not liabilities but evidence of a life fully lived. And I'm not finished living it, not by a long shot. Nods and smiles filled the screen. A virtual chorus of recognition and support from people who understood exactly what I meant, because they were living it too. For the first time in years, perhaps in my entire life, I felt completely C-note, despite my age, but because of it. Not as someone struggling to maintain relevance in a youth-obsessed culture, but as someone whose relevance was inherent, enduring, and essential. 3 months later, Ellis Strategic Underwriting Consultants had 4 clients, including 2 referred by Janet and 1 ironically, that had been a competitor of my former employer. My home office had been transformed with new technology, ergonomic furniture, and a dedicated client meeting space that reflected the professional image I wanted to project: experienced, innovative, and unapologetically mature. My relationship with Amanda was healing gradually through weekly dinners and honest conversations about our expectations, insecurities, and the complex legacy of gender norms we'd both inherited. She'd begun therapy to work through her own aging anxieties and the impact of her father's attitudes on her self-image, a step I admired and supported wholeheartedly. One Tuesday afternoon, as I was preparing for a client presentation, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Janet standing on my porch, a bottle of champagne in one hand and a folder in the other. "We need to celebrate," she announced, sweeping past me into the living room. "Your former employer just settled a class action age discrimination suit with 7 former employees all over 50. All pushed out within the past 3 years. Your case was the catalyst that gave others the courage to come forward." I stared at her, processing this news. I wasn't part of that suit. "No, but you were the first domino." She handed me the folder. "And this is the result: policy changes, mandatory age bias training, and a commitment to age-diverse hiring practices that will be monitored by an independent review board for the next 5 years. I opened the folder, scanning the settlement details with growing amazement. "This will make a real difference." "It already has," Janet confirmed, heading to my kitchen for champagne flutes. The company's stock took a hit when the suit became public. Suddenly, investors were asking questions about talent retention and knowledge loss. The board is now pushing for a comprehensive evaluation of how experience is valued within the organization. As we toasted this unexpected victory, my phone chimed with a text from Amanda. "Just scheduled my first mammogram. Apparently they recommend starting at 40 now, which means I'm already behind. Getting older isn't so terrible when you consider the alternative. Love you, Mom." I smiled, typing back, "Proud of you for taking care of yourself. Age is just data. What matters is what we do with the time we have. Love you too." Later that evening, after Janet had left and I was reviewing my client presentation one final time, I caught my reflection in the darkened window of my office. The lines around my eyes seemed more pronounced in the dim light, the silver threads in my hair more prominent. But instead of the familiar twinge of dismay, I felt a surge of appreciation for this face that had weathered storms, celebrated joys, and now reflected back a woman who refused to be diminished by others' expectations or limitations. "Not bad," I said to my reflection, raising an imaginary glass. "Not bad at all." The next morning brought an unexpected email from Amber. "Ms. Ellis, I hope this isn't inappropriate, but I've given notice at the company. The environment has become increasingly toxic, especially since the settlement. I was wondering if you might be willing to meet for coffee. I have some ideas I'd like to discuss about potentially working together." I smiled as I typed my response, remembering the moment in the office when Amber and I had recognized our connection across the artificial divide of aged women, navigating the same challenging terrain, just at different points on the map. I'd be delighted to meet Captain. 6 months to the day after that devastating Thanksgiving dinner, I hosted a different kind of gathering at my home. The dining room table was extended to its full length, set with my best dishes and adorned with flowers from my garden. Around it sat an extraordinary group of women: Janet and 3 other members of the Silver Alliance. Amber, now my business associate, focusing on digital strategies while learning the underwriting field. 2 former colleagues from my old company who had since left for more supportive environments, and Amanda, who had requested to be included when she heard about the dinner. "I'd like to propose a toast," I said, rising to my feet with a glass of wine. "To new beginnings that were only possible because of difficult endings, to boundaries that create space for authenticity, and to the beauty of faces that tell the truth about the lives we've lived." As glasses clinked and conversation flowed, I looked around the table at this community of women supporting one another across generations, across experiences, across the artificial divisions that so often keep us isolated in our struggles. This was the true revenge, not destruction of those who had hurt me, but creation of something meaningful from the ashes of rejection and dismissal. That night, after everyone had gone home and I was getting ready for bed, I took an extra moment at the bathroom mirror. The face that looked back at me was no longer a battleground of insecurities or a catalog of flaws to be corrected. It was simply my face, the unique intersection of genetics, time, experience, and expression that made me unmistakably myself. "Hello, old friend," I said softly, touching my reflection. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" And in that quiet moment of recognition and reconciliation, I felt the final piece of my transformation click into place. Not a rejection of aging, but a profound acceptance of it. Not a surrender to invisibility, but a claiming of space and voice. Not an ending, but a continuation, with all the wisdom, beauty, and possibility that each new day brings, regardless of the number of days that came before. I am 53 years old. My face tells the story of my life, and I wouldn't change a single line.